Important properties. There are some very important properties in Solidity which you will need to make your codes better and easier also. So these properties are already given in the Solidity documentation and how you can use it. Their use makes your contract more effective, more efficient, and with less codes. So let's see what are these. So here we have 4 of them. I'll explain you one by one. So we have the message sender. Message sender, you can think of it as a variable which stores the address of the account which has called the function. So in Remix, you might have seen like many accounts out there. So the account which is calling the function, its address will be stored in this message.sender. It can be used in many cases, like to check the ownership, to check who has called the function, to keep a track of who are calling the functions, like these. So I've told you about the function. So in the function body, if you write somewhere message.sender, it will give the account address of the person who has called the function right now, and it will keep this address till the next person calls the function. And after this, also we can do what that we can make the owner of the smart contract. For the owner of the smart contract, if let's say we have a contract out here, so how do we get the owner? We'll see that whoever deploys the contract, he is the owner. So what we can do, we can write a constructor function out here, or a constructor basically. So what does this constructor does? It will take the message.sender and place it in some variable. So once it places this message.sender, let's say in some variable known as owner, so you can check it whenever a new function is called. You can check if the caller is basically the owner or not. So it will work as, first when it is deployed, the account who deployed it, it will be stored in the message.sender, its address. Then this address will be stored in the new variable which will be inside the constructor, and when the next function is called, it will check if this owner matches the message.sender or not. So this is how we can verify the owner. Next, message.value. Message.value is the amount of way, ether, finery, any unit you can say, that is given to the function by the person who has called the function. So basically, if you want to send some money inside the smart contract or inside the function, inside any function, you will use this for the amount of the transaction or amount of the funds that has to be received. And just remember that for any function to get money, you need to use a keyword known as payable so that you can pay to this function. And message.value will give the amount that is given to this function. And remember, it always gives the amount in way. And 1 ether is 10 power 18 way. The now timestamp. The now is basically a keyword which will give the timestamp at which the transaction or the function is called. So once the smart contract is deployed, the timestamp doesn't work at that time. When the particular function which has this keyword inside it, when it will be called, and when the transaction for this function will be done, like the transaction will be confirmed, then only the time of the transaction will be given by now, and basically you can store it in any of the variables. And what is it? It is basically a 10-digit integer number. You can say 10-digit integer number, and every second is adds 1 to this number. It is basically the epoch Unix time, which is started from 1st January 1970, and all the seconds from 1st January 1970 are counted in this, and only the leap seconds are ignored. Next we have self-destruct. Self-destruct is a function of Solidity which destroys the smart contract, and it will take a, an address as an argument, so that all the money or fund that is kept in the smart contract will be directly given to this address and the smart contract will be destroyed. So how does this work? Basically, in blockchain you have blocks, and once a contract is deployed, you cannot delete it from the blockchain because blockchain is immutable. So what it does, in the next blocks, only the state of the smart contracts variables changes. So only the state changes. Now if you call self-destructor at this point, from the next block, the state will disappear and no more state mention will be there. So you will be having this contract out of the blockchain just to be thought as apparently, but it is already inside the blockchain and you can't work with it because it is destructed. Next, just remember, if you send a transaction or funds to a self-destructed contract, if you send some transaction or some funds, let's say 5 ether or 10 ether, if you send, the transaction will be confirmed, but you will lose all your funds because it will be stored in this smart contract and it will be locked forever because it is self-destroyed, and you cannot get the money back. And once a self-destroy is done, then no more revert can be done. You cannot revert from a self-destruct. Once it is done, it is done.